Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello, welcome. Well, we got a crew tonight. And so we want to welcome everyone back to the Beyond Nutrition Community podcast. We have a round table today. And this is one every human needs to hear because motivation isn't supposed to carry you. And when it disappears, most people think they failed. So we've titled this podcast tonight, When Motivation Dies, the Truth No One Tells You. So n- if most people think they failed, really nothing is wrong with you. Your body is responding exactly the way it was designed to. So we are joined, Becky and myself, with Coach James and Coach Sly, uh, who, like us, see behind the curtains every single day. So we are going to break down what really happens when motivation dies and why your body shuts down and the simple biological and emotional shifts that actually get people moving again. This is no hype. This is no guilt. This is just the truth that we kind of wish everyone knew. So let's just dive right in. What are the earliest signs that you guys see when someone is slipping into survival mode?
Oh,
Don't everyone jump at once. Go for it, Sly.
well, I see people not doing the small things that they used to do. They're not checking in, or they're not waking up when they said they're going to. It usually starts with small things, or skipping things that they do regularly out of habit. That's that's what I first see mainly with them. How about you, James? The routine
Yeah,
gets smooth.
pretty much failing at the basics go out the window. The fundamentals just fuck off, pretty much. They can't get the fundamentals right, and then it just snowballs, as it does for everybody, including ourselves. I'm sure we're all guilty
Mhm.
of that. Just getting those daily fundamentals just not under control, thinking, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'll do that later on, and then later on becomes the next day, then the next day becomes next week, and then the next week becomes next month.
And then it may not end up and happen at all.
Yeah,
Because that's where people end up
absolutely.
and get out of the rotation, right? They get out of the
Yes.
routine and they don't create even just the basics. And so that's honestly, even just to strip that back, what I see, in clinical practice is the fact that people start to end up and get a little bit anxious about it, right? They start to kind of get on edge or irritable, or this whole emotional tie, right? They start to shut down on that. And so just because everything is chaos, so they have no, what I always tell my clients is, what can you do on your worst day? Set that as your base, right? If you can create even just like 5 non-negotiables that you can do on your worst day, maybe that's just simply getting out of bed, right? Maybe it's not seeing sunrise. Maybe it's getting out of bed. Maybe it's eating 3 meals. Maybe whatever you can do that you can maintain that consistency, you can build from there. But once you start to, kind of like you were saying, you start to get a little bit lax, you start to get a little bit, then it all just kind of starts winding down, and nothing's there, right? So these small ways of keeping that consistent and keeping that movement, keeping, moving forward and progressing, we're not looking at 100%, just 1% better than you did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That's where those small things.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely. I think as, as long as that, like, you become like better than you were yesterday, do something better. You know, um, nobody's looking for perfection. Nobody's perfect. You know, even us as coaches, we're not perfect, and I'm sure every one of us can attest to that. Really, you know.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Um, but it's just all about standard, isn't it? It's having a standard and holding yourself to that standard and holding others to that standard if you're a coach or whatever you may be.
Well, and Sherri and I were discussing this morning. Like you said, the four of us aren't sitting here pretending like we're perfect on a pedestal. And I even, admitted to Sherri this morning that the last couple weeks, there's been a lot of other things that have had to take priority. And so, yeah, there's things that have slipped, right?
100%. Yeah.
But, there's also things like hydration that has been consistent. Meals have been consistent. For me, my sleep as consistent as it can be with, having a child at home. But, that's why I say there's those certain small things that even the basic self-care that you can end up and do to keep, moving forward. It doesn't, even at that, doesn't have to be perfect, but there's a lot of physical cues too that I see in people, maybe digestion is off, bloating, their heart, there's a lot of things on that front that a lot of people don't relate to nervous system side of things. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is the early signs that someone is going into, nervous system dysregulation, this whole chronic fight, flight, freeze, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know that I personally, right, and I don't know what you guys can attest to, but when I'm tired, right, I don't have the motivation to do things, whatever it was. But a lot of times people feel guilty for needing to rest. And that's one of the things, and I'm going to put it out there. Coach James and I are working together, and he has me on rest days in between my exercises. And that's not today. That's not today. I have to exercise when I get done. But I rested yesterday. And that and the communication with us, it tells me that. It's, so what is the purpose of that, James?
What is the purpose of rest days?
Yes.
Well, the purpose of rest days is where all the magic happens, shall we say. When you exercise, when you go into a gym, whatever you may do, you're just creating an environment for change to happen. The magic really happens on rest days. So it's not the 45 minutes, it's not the hour you spend in the gym, it's either 23. It's the 23 hours outside of that makes the difference, shall we say. Rest is in fact more important than work.
Rest and repair.
Yeah.
Rest
and repair. As long as the work is intense enough and you earn that rest, then you get that rest.
Well, what? Go ahead, Becky.
And that's where it's the balance, right? Because even exercise is a hormetic stressor. And so that is putting your body into this sympathetic dominant state, the go, 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 the fight, flight, right? Where the rest day ends up and gets you into that parasympathetic. And it does end up and help with the body's repair, but it also helps on a mental standpoint and energy conservation and hormones. And that's where, breaking it down even into that side of things with like the vagal tone and, just the whole way that the body's nervous system works. A person can overdo training. They can end up and exhaust that whole side of the body. So, when you get out of this autonomic balance, it does end up and create a point where your body is going to end up and shut down, right? If you are just constantly, maybe that's an injury, maybe that's, performance, maybe that's, some other way, but the body is going to tell you that you need that break. That's why, structuring it and being strategic with it. It's not that you are lazy or you don't want to show up. It is a schedule, again, I tell people, just and I do the same thing with myself. I have it on my schedule where I've scheduled it like it's a coaching session. This is my workout time, right? And it's a time that I can be consistent with, because I know myself, I'm not going to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning after, not getting to bed till 10:30 at night when my daughter gets home. So for me, it has to end up and be a time that I can be consistent with every, scheduled day. But there's a lot of people are like, oh, I'll go tomorrow. Well, or they end up and they go every day thinking, that they end up and they need something, heavy, intense, right? Again, going back to that go, constant movement, which movement's important, but that's a whole nother realm of activity level and overload.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do get it mixed up. A lot of people do get confused with workload and intensity. I think a lot of people think they train hard when in fact they don't really. But at the same time, like you mirrored there, Becky, like you train, you go, and then you burn out. Your body will end up just stop. It'll stop. It'll shut down. It will not work. Your brain will not send the signals to your muscles to fire, because it will just go into that fight or flight, and it will just literally just shut down. It's like it's like your brain's a computer. This is what I say to clients. It's like your brain's your PC, your personal computer. So when you're training hard in the gym, it wants to shut down. It's going into that fight or flight mode. It wants to just turn the screensaver on and just chill out. But similarly, if you just keep hammering it, it will just stop working, So I think, and what I do with a lot of my clients, and well, all my clients really, is I will encourage them to push hard, and then have a deload where take the foot off the gas, just chill for a week, yeah, just chill out. And they're like, what do you mean? Well, just chill out, just go to the gym, fuck about, do whatever you want, the brain, everything internally, hormones, everything just calms right down. That inflammation calms right down, and then after that, you're ready to go again.
Sly, what do you see on the mental health side of things with your clients?
I see sometimes they feel like they're getting better and they just stop doing everything that they're already doing, is what I see a lot of. Whether that be taking their medicine or whatever, or forgetting why they're doing the things that they need to be doing. Actually, it was probably 10 months ago or so, I found through searching, it's called 7 Levels Deep. It's a exercise, and you can put whatever your goal or whatever that is on top, and then it says, why is this important to you? And then you give an answer and you keep going, right? Until you really start to feel something. And I think that's a good reason. I took this exercise to just the last couple of weeks to the treatment center. And, one of the things that we said is like, well, this is your why, right? Because our why is supposed to keep us motivated. Our why is supposed to keep us up and going, right? I said, how many of you guys, after they told me their whys, I said, how many of you guys had those same whys in the past and it didn't keep your goal? And everybody's hand raised, right? Because that's the way it goes. And so we did this exercise, and I can't remember the people's names right away, but I know there is a website that you can go to and do it. It's just called 7 Levels Deep, right? And what they want you to do is keep going with that why until you feel some emotion. and keep going down with it. And I think that helps revamp like why you're doing what you're doing. And maybe that's the step that you take. Like, why are you working out? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing your circadian rhythm? Why are you getting up and getting light in your eyes? And even the other day, I was, and like you said, we get to succumb to all the things that other people's problems come around, right? And I'm going to tell you what, it got in this brain that I needed some fried chicken. I wanted some fried chicken. And I was going to get the church's chicken at the grocery store, and that didn't work because nobody came to the counter to weigh my food and check me out, even though I rang the bell. And I was like, well, this is a sign. I'm not standing here until somebody shows up. And then I was like, oh, there's a KFC right there. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want KFC. If I want fried chicken, I can come home and make myself some fried chicken, right? That's the most important thing. But I was like, there was still that part of my brain that was like, well, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And I was like, no, we're not doing this. And I just mentally went through that 7 levels deep why I didn't want to do that. Why my goal was not to eat that chicken. And it's been a very helpful tool with it for sure. And I think it's and then also, the decision fatigue, especially when you're food prepping and you're doing your daily things and you're checking off all the boxes. At some point they're supposed to become habits, right? They're supposed to become habits, and they get stored in our habit part of our brain, and we've made our 1% changes, and we shouldn't have to think about it anymore. And some of those things do, but sometimes they just don't want to. And I think that's fine. But I think we also don't need to lose our way of why we're doing it. I went really down deep this past fall with losing my why and having all the excuses and stuff. And luckily, it did not take me completely out, and I had enough habits there that I could see that the things were coming, and I needed to stop and get back on track again. But it could be a slippery slope. Like want to wake, maybe you want to wake up at 6 a.m. every day, right? But now you're like, well, let me just sleep into 6:20. And then the next thing you know, you're sleeping until 8 o'clock. Oh, it's the weekend. Let me sleep until 8 o'clock. And now it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're still sleeping into 8 o'clock kind of thing. That's what I see a lot of.
And I think that's where, again, they're not really looking at the root, right? They're not digging into, like you said, going that deep is what I feel like people are just looking for the next quick fix. They're not looking to rebuild. They're not looking to, structure. They're just looking at what can I do for the next, 60, 75 days, whatever, right? And that's where it gets them into trouble, right? You can't expect to do the same thing and get different results. And so people don't build those safety cues. They don't build that structure. They don't build that routine. And it just starts to end up and eventually get overwhelming and fall apart.
Or they don't see the results they want right then and there. So they're off to the next thing in 2.2 seconds. I had a girl, she's been struggling, right? And she was listening to a certain podcast on the way back, and she's like, well, he says I should do this, and where do I get my insulin tested at, and what about my hormone panel and stuff? And are these good things to do? Probably yes, maybe, right? But she has another system that worked just fine for her, but you got to stick to it and follow it. And I just told her, said, that is not the person to go down a rabbit hole for. Your brain will be doing flips out of it everywhere if you follow this. Go back to what you know. Go back to what you can be consistent at. And sometimes that's what we have to do, right? Is just go back to the basics, maybe just our foundation of your 5 non-negotiables, right? Mm-hmm. Just go back to there and reboot. And that's a lot of what I did. I mean, it was kind of in a different format, but it was the same things that we've done in all of our. I know, like we'd say these challenges and stuff, but it was like those challenges are meant to build habits that you can do long term and get you the habit forming, and that's kind of what I had to do, is go back to those basics of, like, just, did I get my nutrition in? Did I get my workout in? Um, did I get my self care in? Did I get some personal growth in there? And that can be whatever that looks like for you.
So, what are maybe some simple structure or things people can implement when they feel stuck? And I'm going to go first on this one. I have actually found looking at things like if I need to if I'm stuck and I can't think beyond the end of my nose or whatever, I'll sit and go, there's a light, there's a bottle of water, there's a computer, there's a desk, there's a bag, and I name things, and when I start to regulate down, right, my nervous system can then tolerate the small things, right, the real small things. What about you guys?
Well, I have my touch points, and recently I got these. They're like lava lamp 1 minute timers, 1 30-second timers. Um, Somebody had it in, like, got it one of those fidget boxes or whatever. But I have it on my desk, and when I'm getting overwhelmed at work or whatever, I just flip it over and I watch the little bubbles and the lava thing go to the bottom. And it's like a minute long, but it's enough to, like, bring me back, Both of those two are my top two things right now.
Go for it, James.
I think at the minute, I kind of just name what I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling something, I'll give it a name.
George, do you name it George?
I could call it George. I could call it Harry. I could call it Henry. If it's especially annoying, I could use another word, beginning with C. But we'll not mention that here. So I will try and give it a name, and that helps me regulate it.
I like that.
If it's got a name, I can then talk to it,
Mm.
and I can then tell it to shut the fuck up. I like to do things I can control. It's one of these things I've learned over time. There's things you can't control, and there's things you can control. So I will focus on the things that I can control. Even if it's something daft like making my bed. Make my bed every day. Get up, make my bed. When I come home, at the end of a busy day, I'm coming home to a made bed.
And sometimes, yep, those simple things are the biggest thing.
And I also try to limit. I try to limit like inputs, like external things. So I, for example, I can't remember the last time I watched the news. Literally can't remember the last time I sat down, put the TV on, and watched the news. Can't remember. I don't need any negative shit coming in. So I'll put a block on that. It's almost like survival mode, and I will just literally, like, I can't even remember the last time I literally watched the news like crazy.
We don't watch it either. For the
I
same
don't
reason. The only reason we watched it tonight is because like 5 to 7 miles from us, we seem to have these small little earthquakes. That's the only reason why we turned it on tonight. It's
Yeah,
because,
that's the reason to watch the news, I guess.
yeah, you know, I mean, they were small, but
Yeah, I
and
mean, if you've got natural disasters happening in and around your area,
I probably still wouldn't have watched it if my husband didn't see the news crew. You know,
yeah,
so
you're gonna want to know about that shit, aren't you?
yeah.
Really? But yeah, yeah, those things. I just kind of try and self-regulate, and a lot of the time I just sit with myself and just kind of like give things a chance to manifest. You know?
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to say. Sit and be present.
Yeah,
Be
sit
in,
and be present. Be present with things and
yeah.
kind of like accept them, let them in, and then fuck them off.
Doesn't necessarily mean you have to solve them, but a lot of people end up and suppress too many things.
I think a
instead of
lot of
just
people. I think a lot of people feel like they have to fix things.
Mhm. Because we're fixers, we're doers, we're
Yeah.
we're constantly going, right? We're people pleasing, and
Yeah.
that's where sometimes even just setting boundaries and being able to be at home, right? Be
Yeah.
a no, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to show up for everyone,
Yeah.
and being able to just sit and be in the comfort of yourself. A lot of people, and that's where even working on past traumas, because people don't end up and want to sit there, right? It's uncomfortable. Just like they don't want to do a workout because it's uncomfortable. They don't want to, do other things, right? They don't want to choose healthy food because it's not quick, it's not convenient, and it's not comfortable sometimes to end up and say no to certain people, right?
Well, I went and seen my therapist this weekend. Well, I have two type of therapists. One does ink, and the other one reads my tarot cards. She says I'm coming into my peace era, my peace chapter of my story, and saying those boundaries and only giving my energy to the things that I find important, not just because somebody wants it from me. That can be a way of taking back too,
Mm-hmm.
and doing what you need to do for yourself, right? So
Also, tell people, take like 2 to 5 breaths even through the day around meals, because we get so, tense through the day. Like Sherri was saying about looking at, certain things around and bringing yourself back to that center and to that peace. But whether you're working, in an office or you're working with, public in general, right? Just really taking that time to, bring yourself back, and that can oftentimes be enough to help recenter people too.
absolutely.
Sly, can I tell our audience a couple weeks ago, you and I were kind of texting back and forth, and you were
Oh
in
yeah,
your office, and you were experiencing anxiety, right?
I was having a full on panic attack. It wasn't just
Right.
anxiety.
Yeah. And it just so happened that we were going back and forth, and I'm like, get your touch points. And she's like, oh, good idea, right? But you couldn't see that in that moment.
No. And that happens a lot with people, is like you have your tools in your toolbox, but sometimes we need to have that lifeline. There's a few TV shows or shows where that the lifeline, call a lifeline. That's a real thing, because sometimes we can't see the tools that we need to use that somebody else might know that we have.
Right.
You know, even however many years in, I mean, like I wasn't doing nothing. I was laying on the was I had my doors closed and I was laying on my nice fuzzy carpet in my room of my thing. So it wasn't like I was trying to force my way through it, but it still wasn't there. And just like messaging back and forth, and you're like, get your touch points. Yeah, they're in my bag. Carry them everywhere. I carry them everywhere. But in that moment, I couldn't see them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, you're well, of course. But we're all, and that's the thing. I mean, believe it or not, all four of us coaches, we're here for even each other, right? And that's the nice thing because you know what? We need that. We need that accountability. One of the things that I've personally been working on is taking my old programming and getting rid of those old programming beliefs. And um, when I find myself, and I had to give her a name, and it was Maxine. Do you guys remember the cranky old lady on the greeting cards, Maxine? And she was always cranky. That's who my old programming. I named her like you named James, right? I named her Maxine, and but one of the things, and I've got it wrote down that I carry with me in my on my phone, is stop. Do I want more of this? And do I want this to be my reality? And then I repeat the negative belief slowly. And it sounds kind of silly, right? It's like, well, I didn't like that because blah, 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 blah. Like, and if I verbalize it, it sounds really petty and silly, right? And then I pause and then I ask myself, what do I want? And what do I want my reality to be? And it's like, well, calm, peace. I want to be happy. I want to feel joy. And if I say those out loud, it kind of gives me the strength and the power. And I know this sounds really stupid, but I can do this, the Wonder Woman Superman pose, right? It's like, boom, I've got this. I can do it. So just some of the things that, you can kind of get yourself out of that negative self-talk, and that negative self-talk will blow any motivation.
Mm. That's even with the when you're doing the 7 levels deep, it can take you to a place because you're supposed to do it till you feel, right? And one of the things that I did learn is like some people, especially if they're early in recovery of any type, right? They can't identify the feelings that they're having. So I ended up even writing like a whole whiteboard of feelings that they could look at so they could just like look at it and identify it. And I had to do the same thing. I can remember I was leaving aftercare and the the person that was just doing our aftercare was retiring, and I was like, well, can I have that feelings poster? Because we did feel feelings. And then even as most of us are Gen Xers here, even with that, we weren't allowed to have feelings. So like I got double whammied, I feel like. I'm like, feelings, I don't know what feelings, I don't know what I'm feeling. I probably had that feelings poster on my wall at my other apartment for almost 2 years. Just so I could identify like what I was feeling and give it a name, right?
Yeah.
And give it a name. Like, oh, I also had them when they had those negative, when they did start feeling those negative feelings about what they were doing. I said, let's flip those. Although I don't believe there's no such thing as bad feelings. You know what I mean? Like, what you feel is what you feel. You're going to feel it, but like, don't sit in it. Like what James does, he gives it a name and tells it to fuck off. I felt naughty saying that right now.
But do I need to handle all the swear words on this roundtable?
I don't know. I don't know if we're allowed to say them, so I try to be good.
Well, our other interview with James by himself wasn't canceled off YouTube. So
so it's a free range. Yes.
So between YouTube, between Instagram, Twitch, Rumble, the podcast, none of it got canceled. I didn't get any cancellation emails. So
Because he says it with the accent, right? So
Oh,
it makes it all okay. Yeah.
oh, so I just got to pull out the accent every time I want to say it. Okay.
Oh, I'd
Or
love to
like,
hear that. I'd love to hear that accent. Like, I have to say,
I'll just
yeah.
do it as the chicken or
I
something.
guess I can
don't
get
know,
it. I
figure
guess
it
I can
out.
get away with it because I look the part. Maybe I don't know.
Oh, that's
that's
funny.
hilarious that you brought that up, Sly, because I just realized that on our pictures that we did for Mother's Day, my husband's wearing that chicken shirt. And he's front and center in the pictures.
I had a calendar that of like 30 days of those, and I just keep giving them to people. So
It's
it's fun.
hilarious.
It's fun.
Funny. So, what do you guys think with when people have emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
What emotions do people confuse with a lack of motivation? Meaning, like, most people think that they're unmotivated, but what they're actually feeling is an emotional weight, that their nervous system doesn't know how to carry it, right? And so they freeze or, and they blame it on laziness, shame, anything that you guys can throw in there.
I think the main thing that I've faced is procrastination. That's a massive thing. Is that kind of the want to do something, the want to change, the want to make a change, but that kind of there's always just something there that's just stopping them from taking that jump. It's like that meme that's all over the place. The best time to jump is when you're scared to jump, isn't it? Or something like that. I don't know. That's probably completely wrong.
Because that's when you're going to end up and build, is when you're afraid to end up and take that leap.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the main thing I face is people kind of like procrastinating and kind of like going through the process and then they're not seeing the results straight away, which really fucking annoys me because it doesn't happen overnight. And it's kind of like, well, you've got to put the work in, and then they want the works, they want the results without the work. That's one arm of it, but the main thing is that procrastination. It's that kind of like, yeah, I really want it, but do I want to do it? I don't know. Do I want to do it? Oh, I don't know. Do I want to commit to something? Do I want to invest in myself?
Well,
and I always find that a very interesting kind of take on things. It's like, well, why wouldn't you want to? I always want to know why they wouldn't want to invest in themselves. Like, what's stopping you?
But I think on that note, it's the fact of fear, because they're afraid to fail. They're afraid, they're fearful of judgment. They're fear of, the perfectionism, right? If they can't end up and do it perfect, someone's going to end up and critique them, right? It's like this constant unknown, because again, you're getting outside your comfort bubble, right? And so your constant criticism.
That's the best place to live.
It is.
Is
But
outside comfort zone,
But the body tries to protect you, right? And it wants to.
The brain does. The brain's
brain
like,
wants
no,
to protect
this
you,
isn't
and
good. We don't like this.
So
we don't like this.
It's going to try and get the person, right, to avoid it altogether.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's misread, and that's where it's not that you're unmotivated or whatever, right? It's this fear-based protective response that the body ends up and has. But that's also where, like, and Sly said it earlier, creating lists, creating check-in, creating accountability, having a coach, right? Because you're going to go through this emotional fatigue side of things where you're just mentally depleted, right? You're burnout, but it doesn't mean that it stops. And that's where, you may end up and have a lack of energy, but there's other things that you can end up and do during that time. So
Also, our brain has that neuroplasticity. I know I didn't say that completely right.
You
So we
did.
can rewire our brains by forming these habits. And like you said before, with those 1% changes.
Mhm.
I think there's also grief, right?
Mm.
Grief of that old identity that I'm trying to hang on to, or the old routines, or that old version of myself, or the old coping mechanisms, or that old season of life. And I'll give you a real world raw example. So Coach James changed up my macros. And the next day, I'm driving to work and I'm telling Coach Becky, well, he changed up my macros. I can't eat that much. And she let me finish. And I'm trying, right? I'm trying to hit those macros now because that was the old me. The old me said, oh my goodness, when I ate that much, I gained weight. Well, we're modifying those macros, right? We're changing things up, we're switching things for the body. And I have to trust the process. But it was so funny because Andre James gave me these macros and I can't eat that much. But it was that old identity, right? Well, but James, that didn't work before, right? That was
Yeah.
hanging on to that. Yeah,
It was like a knee-jerk reaction, and you're not in the same place you were then either.
correct.
And that's where stepping away from that identity, a lot of people end up and want to hang on to it because that's what they've claimed, right?
So how's that working now?
I'm actually seeing a loss on the scale, right? And I came back after literally the first exercise I did with Coach James, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I forgot how much I enjoyed that. I was breathing hard. I was like dying. It's like I can't do another whatever exercise it was. I was laying flat on the floor, and I felt energized afterwards, like crazy, right? And I forgot that. Hush, hush, Coach Becky, hush. I know. Well, and I used to work out, right? I used to lift heavy. I used to do all that. My circumstances changed because we're in a camper. But that doesn't mean, right? Everything that Coach James gave me to do has nothing to do with weight. It's got everything to do with my own body, right? So, yeah. And it's like, well, I can't do that exercise. And it's like, so did you change it up? Yes, I did. Right. So I modified it. The consistency, right? So how does that self trust impact that consistency? That mechanism of, what if your brain won't let you even start? What do you guys think?
Well,
I'll let someone else feel that before I weigh in on that.
I pushed back. I gave every type of excuse not to start my recent programming that I was doing, right? What if this? What if that? They're on this level of over here. You name it. I had an excuse for it. What if that person isn't who they said they are because I've been tainted with some of the influencers that are out there and different things and stuff like that. And just on and on. So I watched this person like a hawk for like 6 months, right? And then I finally was just like, let me just do this. And what I found out was it was great. There are modifications. There's 3 or 4 different versions of all the things. I don't have to even go to the gym. I can do it right here. I have everything I need right here. And I found that it's like reviving to let some of that go, right? I had my own thing that I did, but I wasn't getting anywhere with my own thing. Not that I wasn't getting anywhere, but I just felt I don't know. I don't know what it was, but this has just been different. It's nice to let go of some of that, right? And even getting out of your comfort zone of like that's not who I am. I'm not ever going to be able to do that. What are you thinking? And then seeing somebody that you're like looking at, like, there's no way. And she's out there doing it. And you're like, oh, I could do that. Having that community of watching other people get out of their comfort zones and doing things. And you're like, okay, maybe I can do that. Even if you don't see eye to eye with everything, you don't have to be compatible 100% with everything that everybody's doing, but you do need to get out of your own fucking way and let somebody else lead.
You didn't say that with an accent.
I know. I said it in a sly accent. But I love that that's what you're doing, Sherri, and I love that that's what I have been doing and stuff, is like just getting out of our own way with some of the things and making some changes for our new goals, our new whys, our new what we're looking for, right?
I think the biggest thing with self-trust is really looking internally. Yes, other people have great influence, right? But many times what I see is people try to end up and fit the mold of someone else.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many methods, so many ways out there. There's so much information, right? It's like a fire hose of information where people end up and just simply get overwhelmed, or they try to end up, for instance, James and Sherri, right? James created the plan for Sherri. It's an individualized plan. It's not just some blanket approach, right? That here, follow this. It's more broken down into same thing, that I've done over the last year. I did what worked for me, not, full elimination that someone else tells me to eat, certain foods all day long or hit this certain, steps, right? It was what works for myself. And so turning that consistency, into my body safety cue has shifted my nervous system tremendously, to where I have been able to make a difference, because I've had a lot of people that follow me on Instagram where they're like, you've done the circadian stuff for 4 years, which actually it's been about 6 to be accurate. But, what has changed that has made the difference? And some of these smaller things, right, has made that big difference. Where are there other things that could have been, in the process? Yeah, sure, there are. But again, it's what built that self-trust in myself to be able to be consistent, to be able to move forward, to move towards those goals and evolving and learning what works. And that's where, making promises to yourself and being accountable has to end up and come first. Because if you have low self-trust, you're going to end up and have self-doubt, right? You're going to doubt in yourself. You're going to second guess it. You're going to, sure, you even asked me this morning, are you second guessing? Because there were, comments made. She's like, are you second guessing yourself? No, I'm not, right? I'm not breaking the promise that I made to myself. But it's just that whole side of things when you look at self-trust, and it does help to prevent the shame spiral. People often confuse the lack of consistency with lack of discipline. So, really create your own reality, not just some highlight reel.
I like that. Yeah, be this. I've heard some people say, be the CEO of your body, be the CEO of your life, right? Mm-hmm. You're the CEO of that. But I also, my tattoo, that's, I can't show you right now because it's ugly because it's shedding. But, my tattoo that I got, DJ Jaga now, is like to be the DJ of your own life. You play and set the music to your own life. Make those decisions. Do you need help along the way? Probably. Yes. And that's okay. But you can still do what you said, do what works for you. You are your own DJ.
Absolutely.
And when it's healed, you can see the beauty of it, of my tattoo, but not until it's healed. It's so ugly right now.
All right. Well, let's talk about the lies people believe about motivation, right? Um, who wants to start? Becky, you want to start?
There's a lot of lies that people end up and believe about the lack of motivation. I mean, when motivation, right, fails, or they end up and they believe in motivation. And sometimes that discipline has to end up and come over motivation.
Say it again louder.
Because
Say
you're
it
not
louder, Becky.
because you're not always going to end up and have that motivation to do something. And maybe that's simply getting up at sunrise. Maybe that's going to the gym. Maybe that's, whatever the case may be, right? When you are solely relying on the motivation, and again, why do I schedule things? Because there's going to be days where I wake up, or there's going to be days where, maybe my daughter didn't get home till who knows when. And, so I got to bed late and I'm tired, and, I can make all sorts of excuses to not necessarily do it. Right. But again, creating that consistency, it doesn't have to be perfection, but don't solely rely on motivation.
Absolutely.
Coach
One of the
James?
things that I did,
Oh,
I
yes.
have a hard time, and I'm trying to get out of bed early because my fan's on, but it's also connected to Echo. So I have it turning off at a certain time, so I make sure I get out of bed.
That works.
Yeah, it's just little hacks like that, little things. But I love what you said about discipline and their over motivation. I love that. I love it, love it, love it, love it.
Well,
I
I
think,
mean,
oh,
I was just going to say, if you want a new you, right? If you want to be a new version, you have to be willing to do something that is different.
Mhm.
And that's where people are very content, and they want that ability to be able to stay in themselves, right? They want what's known, and it's really hard to end up and create that discipline effect, but it will build a stronger person.
yeah. And people, myself included, right? I need to feel inspired before I start, right? Because if I don't feel that spark, right, then how am I going to do, New Year's resolutions? I mean, whatever it is, right? Whatever is happening. And if you wait on that spark, it's not going to happen, right? The nervous system doesn't really wait for inspiration. It waits for safety and clarity. And that was one of the things that Coach James asked me, are you going to do this? Like, are you? And it was like, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And what did I tell you this morning, Becky?
I don't
I
know, that
needed,
was 12
uh,
hours ago.
I know, I needed the accountability, right? I am not going to let Coach James down, but in all of that, I have a spark now, right? To do it. Um, what are some other lies that you guys see, Coach James?
I think just go back to what you were saying there about it's a bit of a touchy subject, but a lot of people kind of like the idea of they want the results, but they don't want to put the work in. But mainly going back to what you were saying, Becky, about going into comfort zones. You've got to be out of your comfort zone for anything to change. It's a simple fact. If you keep doing the same shit day in, day out, nothing's going to change. And I think that's probably the main thing that I kind of come across, or that I kind of pick apart from, that I can pull out of somebody, shall we say, is that inability to live outside of a comfort zone. Nothing bad's going to happen. You're not going to die. Nothing. Your family isn't going to suddenly explode in a house fire or whatever it might be. You're outside your fucking comfort zone, for fuck's sake, you know. And that's where change happens, you know. And it really frustrates me because I see it as something so simple and something so small, but obviously I understand that for other people it's something big, you know. But that's kind of like the first thing that I try and coach people in is getting used to being uncomfortable, and that lie that they tell themselves that, yeah, I'm working hard, I'm going to the gym. Yeah, you're going to the gym, you're walking on the treadmill for 20 minutes, then you're going home. What the fuck's that going to achieve? You could do that outside, you know. So it's getting people to realize that when you're there, you're kind of there to work. That's the environment that you're in, to put the work in. And much like working with yourself, Sherri, finding something that works for that person, that gives them that spark, that they can think, well, actually, yes, this is going to change me, you know. Because, like you said, motivation comes and goes like the tide of the sea, you know. It will go, it will come back, but it'll go just as quick. Discipline is pretty much where it all falls down, and you know, I'm looking forward to seeing what Sherri can do with the tools that I've given her. You know, yeah, she's not in a gym environment, you know, but she's doing what she can with what she's got. But you know, I could natter on for hours about the shit that people tell me, the excuses that people give me when I talk to them in the gym about why they're not doing what they're meant to be doing. You know what I mean? I can write a book on it. But I'm sure you guys have heard it as well as coaches. So, yeah.
So just a quick rapid fire. What is one thing that you have done recently that has taken you personally out of your comfort zone? Who wants to go first?
I'm taking weekly update progress pictures and putting them on a platform for others. That's what I've been doing. Completely out of my comfort zone.
How's that felt?
I made it a little bit fun. I do it in a sly way, you know.
Do you mean in the sly way or your sly way?
My way. I've made it a little fun. They're not as cutesy, and they are cutesy, but they're not like, you know, like my outfit that I wear is like a camouflage thing, and then I have these combat boots that are heels, that have hills on them and stuff. So I made a little fun for myself, a little grungy for myself, my taste. But it's just like I do it, and it's just way out of my comfort zone. But I'm going to tell you, it does show a lot more than what the scale or anything else is going to show me. I will say that I can see a lot better out of that over the last months that I've been doing it. But yeah,
I would have to agree. That's kind of been one of the other things. Those, when you put the progress pictures out there of yourself, you are really opening yourself up.
Yeah.
You know, not only that, but fully disclosing a lot of the metrics also. You know, because that really ends up and kind of sets you up too. You know, I remember the first time I put it out there and Sherri screenshot it and sent it back to me, and she's like, "Did you mean to put the number on there?" I'm like, "Yep. We're going open book." But yeah, I mean, it was because again, it sets you up for that criticism. right? For someone to critique you. But I also want to end up and be an open book. So can't be an open book if I'm still hiding behind that wall.
So that's your comfort zone that you, Becky,
That is my comfort zone. Yes.
that you got out of. What about you, James?
I recently posted a reel given out to me, and it's ironically, but I've got a really good friend that I've been friends with for 20 plus years, who I coach and PT and train, and he couldn't make it for a session because he basically said he wanted to stay in the house and shut the curtains and not come out of the house. So I, off the back of that, kind of got me thinking, and I thought, right, well, I'm going to tell my story in a very, very short, very, very short reel. So I put a reel out there talking about my mental health struggles, shall we say, which I have no problem talking about in kind of like a one-to-one. I class this as like a class. This is like a group setting, shall we say? But I thought, right, I'm just going to share it on social media and just put it out there. And it got a few mixed comments. I had one person laugh at it on TikTok, considering I divulged that I had attempted to commit suicide in the past, and had been there in that dark place, and they thought it appropriate to laugh at that. So that was that was an interesting interaction, shall we say. But I find that kind of just putting yourself out there and opening that book, like Becky said, kind of being an open book kind of thing, you know. That's something that I've not done. I've spoke to people privately about it, but I've never, ever mentioned it publicly. So that's been something. I mean, don't get us wrong. It's had more positive effects than negative. Put it that way. It's actually, you know, helped a lot of people apparently. And a lot of people have come back to us and they're like, well, no, I wouldn't have thought someone like you would have mental health issues or whatever it might be, you know. Because apparently, if you look like Action Man, you look like Superman. Apparently, you're invisible. You're invincible. Invincible. Yeah, invincible. When that's clearly not the case. So that's one thing that I've done recently. That's quite a big thing to get out of my comfort zone.
That was a big thing to end up and put that reel. I seen the reel. It was a big thing.
Yeah.
And you know, and
so many Facebook minutes though, and Instagram minutes a day.
And I think that's the biggest thing is, again, social media for many people is just a highlight reel. They don't make it so that the person is relatable. And to me, when someone is an open book, when they share their story, they share, hey, you know, I'm struggling, right? That makes it, to me, relatable. Those are the people that I end up and I want to follow. The people that are going to share the good with the bad, with the ugly, you know. And again, because none of us four are perfect, right? We have tough days. We have bad days. We have, you know, days that we don't even want to end up and open our curtains. But we still, yes, we know that we show up for each other. But it is tough. And that's where, like I said, public doesn't end up and see it. But what's yours, Sherri?
Oh, mine is saying yes to Coach. Actually, I went to Coach James and said, I'm ready. And I wasn't. And I'm still not. But I'm here. and I put myself out there, and I just told our audience that I did what I did, right? Because it's a struggle. It's a struggle constantly. Um, oh my gosh, I can't eat enough macros. Oh, I can't eat that much. Oh, I don't feel like exercising when I get done here. And it's a constant struggle. So I put myself, because something had to change, right? Because what I was doing was not working. And which is so funny because we all find that with all four of us, right? We're coaches, we coach people, we do all the things, but sometimes you just need that extra help with other coaches. That is the importance of community. Let's talk about that, Becky. You want to talk about community?
Sure. I always say I end up and I'm willing to free it here. But that's where, again, going back to your side of it, right? You're in the area. I'll go to community, but I want to touch upon what you said first.
Okay.
So being able to put your story, right? Getting you out of the comfort of what you are doing, getting you comfortable with what you're doing to get you out of the comfort to even start sharing that. Sharing the raw, sharing the I'm doing this accountability. Yes, you're accountable to James right now, but how many other people are out there that are so relatable to your story? So you're prepared. We're going to end up and work on content. But anyway, community. We'll go back to the community side of things. She loves when I end up and I call her out like that. But anyway, we do have a community. The community we have several office hours because we are HSA, FSA approved. We can't just call them meetings anymore. So we do have the office hours, and we lost Coach Sly on that note. Where people can end up and come in and they can be accountable. They can end up and check in. They can just have a conversation. I mean, sometimes we end up and just talk about life. It doesn't necessarily have to be all about coaching. It can just be life because sometimes people don't have that companionship or, ability to socialize in real life, right? Maybe it's work, maybe it's where they live, whatever the case may be. So
Absolutely.
we do have a community.
Any last thing? Yeah, we do. Please join us. I'll let Becky put that at the bottom of the screen. And while she's doing that, any last tips you want to give, Coach James? Or comment or anything?
I basically didn't hear a word of what Becky said, so I do apologize.
Community. We have a community.
But in terms of last minute tips, advice, just fucking do it. Just go and fucking do the thing. Yeah. There's no excuses. There's no, there are no excuses.
Yeah.
End of. You can come up with as many as you want, but like Sherri's, I'm sure you can attest to. You fire questions at me, but I've always had the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess that's.
And you aren't expecting perfectionism, right? We're not expecting because it's very messy. It is very, very messy, right? And that's okay.
I never expect perfection. There's nobody's perfect. Nobody is perfect. Anybody who claims to be perfect is a fucking liar. That's the last thing I'd like to leave out. There you go. Anyone who claims to be perfect is a fucking lying. Yeah, you know the rest of that word.
Becky, any last?
Just the fact that as a general society, most people aren't lazy. They're not broken. They're not, failing. It's your body.
Becky's signal.
Am I?
You're froze. Let's keep talking. We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I have a funky face, but healing doesn't require you to push harder all the time. It begins with starting. And that's where many people end up, and they need to anchor their day with just simply starting. Consistency.
Absolutely. Well, if today's conversation hit home for you, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone that needs to hear it. That's nothing's wrong with them, right? Motivation isn't supposed to carry you. And losing it doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. And when you understand what's really happening inside your body and your mind, you can finally move forward in a way that feels honest and sustainable and doable. Thank you so much to all the coaches for being on here. We are blessed you are here. Thanks for being our audience, for being a part of the Beyond Nutrition community. And we will see you next Monday. Is it next Monday? Yes,
It
we
is
still have
next
one more,
Monday.
right? Yeah. So Memorial Weekend, we won't be on Monday night, but next we will be back Monday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time. So, yeah. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Have a wonderful